Good morning. My name is Lecky, as you can see, and I am out here in Washington State. So, yes, it is really morning. And I wanted to talk to you to just a little note here, a little piece on fascia. And I've been in this discussion with some friends about uh, the the place that fascia has in stiffness of wrist. This is the latest thread that we have going is. Now, this is something I've been teaching for some time, about a decade, because the stress response is, which we also call fight or flight. Lately, I've been calling it the threat response because that's why it's there, partially. All right, there's two different forms of stress, right? There's eustress and then there's distress. Now, eustress would be the kind of thing, and I liken it to when we were watching the Seahawks and the New England Patriots play for the Super Bowl. How could I not remember that? And Seattle was behind. They were like on the 1 yard line or some crazy thing like that. So basically, a shoe-in play to win the game, and everybody's setting up because they're getting ready to snap the ball. They have the best running back in the business, a really good quarterback, so forth and so on. And of course, they show the pictures. He just, of course, we were watching it as a community, and everybody was on the edge of the chairs. All the coaches were, standing up with their hands on their knees, and the head coach was chomping away on this probably this huge wad of gum. That's what you call eustress. Okay, that's the kind of stress, a deadline that a team has to face. It is no different than championships. Your fight flight is activated, but it's activated in a safe environment. Even though it's a safe environment, depending on your stress history, that can be problematic. Anyway, and distress is when that same system is activated in a threatening situation. Okay, so in the safe situation, you're not likely, depending on your stress history, to go into, in my opinion, to go into the state of freeze as quickly or as quickly as you would under distress. Anyway, stress is fight or flight. Now, and Dr. Peter Levine covers this in his book, In an Unspoken Voice. Pretty much what happens to the body when your emotional part of your brain, your amygdala, says threat. It is like the smoke alarm you have in the ceiling of your room. It which should be on the outside, not inside your door, outside your door. Because if the fire is outside the door and you have to trip the alarm inside the door, then that means that whatever's out there is now in your room. And that's too late. So put it outside the door and then have yourself a way to get out the window if you need to. So like that window behind me, exits to the garage roof, and then I can slide down, grab the gutter, and if the gutter comes off with me, it's a fairly slow descent because those things are just got to hang on. Otherwise, out of this window to my right here, I would use an escape ladder, which is technically in my bedroom, but same side of the house, yada, yada. Anyway, boom, off I go. If my doorknob is hot and I touch that with the back of my hand, now I have an exit somewhere else. Anyway, your public service announcement segue. You have this stress response system that does say threat. And that might very well be perceived rather than actual, but it does not matter so far as your body is concerned. It responds fight or flight. What do you think is going to happen to your muscles? If somebody walks up to you and gives you a big shove and says, I'm going to pound the living out of you, we don't just relax like we're in a sauna. We gear up. We go into our stance and we get ready for the fight. All of our muscles now are tight, constricted. The blood is now pumping. It's looking for action. And if somebody did that, and boy, suddenly the guy, 8 feet away, leaned up against the exit and blop, he fell out, I might just go there. Either way, flight, my leg muscles, or fight, all of my muscles are going to be engaged, but they're going to be tight. That's what the signaling of my brain does to my myofascial system. Now, here's the thing. Myofascial means that my muscles and my fascia. And there's an article in New Scientist. It's newscientist.com. Fascia, the long overlooked tissue that shapes your health. And this is kind of what we've been working around. And Robert Schleif is also mentioned because he's a researcher in this field. But this is stuff I've been teaching for quite some time, that if you're going into fight or flight, your myofascial system is constricting. And now in one of my books over my shoulder here is my manual that I had to study to get my certification as a personal trainer, which I did a couple years ago. And in there it even says, because fascia is everywhere in the body, and it's moves through all of your muscles. And there's, in that my book on personal trainer certification, there is a section on the muscle. They cut the fibers, would be like through here, pulling it apart and looking at it and seeing all the different muscle fibers and how they react to one another, how they stretch and pull together, and then the chemical stuff that's needed for that to happen. But now here's the fascia, is that in between all these fibers and everything else. But the muscle here, so this muscle here, my bicep, it has an end and an insertion. And it might be actually insertion and end, but okay, it does. It has there's a ligament on each end, and a tendon is connected in there. The fascia, however, doesn't. It goes over, all the way through, all the way around to the next ones into my hands. And there was some speculation in that book that really what might be transferring the power of the muscle from here to somewhere else is not necessarily the muscle. It might be the fascia. So what happens when we're under stress? This gets constricted, and that's okay. Stress is a cycle. I've shared that here before. And let's see if I'm going to call up a slide here. And that is here. Stress. It's a cyclical, autonomic neurophysiological strain on somatic resources. One of those somatic resources is my muscles. Fascia comes along with the ride, or it's a strain on my fascia, the muscles come along. It doesn't matter how you say it. My bones, everything in my body, everything that's contained in my skin is all of my resources. So in response to a perceived threat that's primarily looking for this fight or flight. That's how this works. So with that in mind, then, every time we have a stressor during the day, my system responds to that. It reacts to that. And then I have this stiffness, this myofascia. And stress is cyclical, which means it has a clear beginning and a clear end. And that's where we get tripped up, because let me add another one here. Right, here's and I'll get rid of myself here. Anyway, think of this in terms of an actual cycle, but even if you look at it as the bell curve here, what ends up happening is we start actually inside the social engagement area. It's possible to be way down here in this area, and we get this threat response message. The body goes into fight or flight, perhaps even to freeze. If the cycle gets completed, there's a deactivation process in our own body. And the reason it's there is because it keeps us alive. Wild animals have this, and they do this in this deactivation process. If you look at my website, www.raiseyourresilience.com, what you'll see is an impala in a cheetah's mouth or a leopard. And okay, that's as close to death as I can think you're going to get. But then watching this whole video, you're able to see this deactivation process in this gazelle or impala, I think it is, this prey that this cat has got, and you get to watch it. It's no different in any other mammal for the most part. There has to be a reset of two things. One is the breathing, and the second one is the discharge of the energy. Because once you go into activation state, the up of the bell curve, now you're really starting to, your body's primed for fighting or fleeing, and that includes the energy that's needed to do either one of them. So imagine what happens if we don't do either of them. We have completely changed our neurophysiology, our endocrine system, our cardiovascular system, all of that. It has completely changed to deal with an emergency threat. We have not evolved to deal with a chronic state of emergency threat. It will have an impact. And one of the things that impacts is this muscular constriction. So the fascia, yes, it's going to do exactly that. It is going to get stiff. Now imagine what that looks like in the human body. So if you see, can I do this out of this tech neck? Okay. Had a hump in the back. I don't even know if I'm on camera anymore. I can't. So then we end up with a problem, don't we? So next time you're out at the grocery store, start looking at bodies as being constricted. What would happen if that constriction in the hump of the back got relaxed? What would happen to the hips? What would happen to the legs? What would happen to the hands and the arms? Okay. When we start to look at things that way, it makes a big difference. When we look at our own body and feel our own body, it makes a big difference, because now and stretching its muscles is a little different than stretching fascia, but that might help solve some of your issues. Anyway, just wanted to share that with you, because stress and the stress response cycle is a huge source of what's causing a constriction here. Now, this article in New Scientist goes on to say that, and there are some names. Schleif is a name that you can look up or read about for facial fitness, for one thing. And then there is Tom Myers. He wrote a book called Anatomy Trains. And if you want to learn more about this and how to stretch some of these things, those are both good names, because it's a little different moving your fascia than it is moving your muscles. So, and it's supposed to, you can move the muscle and not the fascia. That's one of the signs. And I'm pretty sure Tom Myers, and another name, I don't know if he's got any books. I don't think so. Gil Headley is an exceptional. He's got some great video tutorials, great website, and you can learn how to take care of this fascia as well as your muscles. One of the things that, and New Scientist is pretty clear over here, and it's true, that for the most part, all right, they did not, they called it different things, interstitial tissue. They used to call it a natural bandage. Now we call it fascia. So that's what it looks like. Sheets of white fibrous connective tissue that are strong yet flexible and perfect for keeping muscles and organs in place. They're also sticky, gloopy, and get in the way of looking at the muscles, bones, and organs they cover. So when they were anatomizing, they were just separating all this stuff, and nobody was paying any attention to this big white yellowish white stuff that is everywhere in the body. And so if I were to just peel off my skin now, you'd be looking at the fascia, not my muscle. All right. So now that it says here, they're starting to, all right. So it says they're also sticky, glooping, get in the way of looking at the muscles, bones, and organs, which explains why for years anatomists cut this tissue off, chucked it away, and thought nothing more about it. Okay. Now, however, they aren't. Now they're starting to say, well, wait a minute. This stuff is the site of biological activity that explains some of the links between lifestyle and health. Boom. So if you have stiffness, one of the things you could do is begin to just do some simple fascia. I use a soft roller for the most part. And sometimes just doing stretches allows you to go real slow. Fascia likes slow, muscle not so much. And then gentle movements. Another name for fascia, Thomas Hanna and his modality called somatics. There are somatic practitioners. He's got some fascinating stuff. So those names there should get you plenty of what you need to know on how to bring health to that. And primarily then, the bigger issue is always, what are you doing about the level of stress responses in your life? Part of that is because if, like I said earlier, if we don't do anything with this flight energy, what is happening? Well, it puts you in a chronic state of stress because we don't close out this cycle. And if you don't ever close out that cycle, you're going to be in trouble in a sense. Your neurophysiology is different, your endocrine system is different, your cardiovascular, and then your glucose and the stuff that goes along with it that controls it, insulin, that system gets whacked out. All kinds of problems, immune system, reproductive system, all of these just get jazzballed. Your immune system, everything. It goes into protection. I am no longer needing protection. My system is way over here. I'm hoping to be over here, never the twain shall meet, but the system way over here is having an impact on my daily life and health. And then eventually it begins to shape the way I believe, in my worldview. It has some long-term consequences that are pretty rough. Raise your resilience. That's how we teach you how to take these cycles, complete them, and discharge them out of the body. And okay, the first place you can start looking to question whether you need that or not is the stiffness level in your own body, because it might not be just your muscles. It could very well be your fascia. Anyway, that was a little bit longer than I wanted it to be, but you're now armed and equipped with some knowledge. Do with it what you will. Have yourselves a great week. We'll see you on the flip side. Bye.